And the next speaker we have is Vimal Stan. He's a Scrum Master working with the team at Prowareness now. And he's going to talk about release planning as a communication tool, right? We spoke about individuals and interactions in the Agile Manifesto. So Vimal, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, give it up for Vimal Stan, and this is the last talk before lunch.
Hello everyone, my name is Vimal and I work with the Agile Cockpit team here as a Scrum Master and UI Architect in Prowareness.
Right, actually Vimal's got sore throat, so I've got...
Yeah, I'm just recovering, so if you can't hear me, please let me know so I can speak a little louder. Is that okay?
We can put in the mic.
Yeah. Jacob.
Yep.
Okay, so we build Agile Cockpit, which is a project management tool in Prowareness, and we started a few months ago actually. We wanted to build a release planning tool because that was an issue that a lot of our clients faced. So what we did was we had a couple of conversations with people from different companies as well as people within Prowareness, and we found some very interesting things as to why release planning fails. Right? The main thing we saw was release planning fails because the tool that you use doesn't help you have conversations that would prevent failure. So I thought it would be a nice thing to share. Is this okay? It will look like that. Okay, so is this better? Yeah. Alright, so yeah, the main reason we wanted to do this is because well, we found some interesting things, and in spite of talking to people across companies, we generally found the same problems repeating over and over again. So I thought it would be interesting to share with you guys, and especially to any product owners here. Anybody product owners?
It wasn't.
Was? Okay. Yours is, will be, all good. Right? So if you guys, so I'd rather not have this me talking here. It would be nice if we could have a conversation. Right? So if you guys see this happening over and over again. Okay, so the first slide, relevance and motivation. It seems a little awkward that a talk about release planning would talk about its relevance, but let's put this slide in here because one of the last conversations we had, so this company was introducing CD, right? So continuous delivery. So they release every time they build a feature and it goes out into production almost instantly. And what happened was this person said, I do CD, I don't need a release plan. Which was a little awkward because you're trying to show him that you built a really cool release planning tool, and he says we don't need release planning. And the motivation to do it, he says, well, I know exactly what's going to go there when, so I don't need to actually plan for it. So then we asked him, how do you measure your milestones? Fine, you know exactly what's going to go when, but do you know when you want it? Right? So you got, say, a feature A delivered today, but are you sure that's when you wanted it, or did you want it yesterday or tomorrow? So are you meeting your expectations, or you're not meeting them? And expectation management. So it's good for the PO to know when he's delivering stuff to a stakeholder, right? And it's also good for the team to know what they're building. So yeah, you do sprint refinements, you do sprint planning, but then that's the short-term vision of what you're building, right? A team can't really innovate within the context of a sprint. It's too small. So when you have a release plan, that's when you're going to be actually thinking, okay, this stuff is coming in the future, so if I do what I'm doing now better, it's going to make my job easier. I deliver more value at the end of it. And it's a conversation start, right? So if I'm going to look at a burn down, then I know what's going on. Whether it's going well, it's going badly, it's meeting expectations, right? That conversation you can have when you have something representing your vision. If you don't have a release plan, you have nothing to talk about. So this is the main crux of the talk. So why do release plans not work? I mean, we've seen it time and again, release plans fail all the time, right? A lot of people tend to do release plans using Excel sheets, which is a good tool, right? But one thing we noticed was POs who are relatively new to what they're doing, they tend to learn through experience, which all of us do. But that experience costs them, the time and the resources that they have. So it's generally not a good way to learn. It's an expensive way to learn. They're translucent. So these guys do a good job. They set up the release plan, looks nice. but they tend to miss out the finer details in the plan. So I'll come to that, I'll show you some stuff which will make this a little more clear. But they think they have the whole picture when they actually don't, right? And badly planned releases. It's very surprising how many, badly planned releases we saw, considering the POs who we met were quite experienced, and they kept complaining. The releases, they're not going according to plan, the team's not delivering, the stakeholders are pissed off, all that kind of stuff. So when you have badly planned releases, you're not using your resources effectively, right? The people you have, the money that you've got, your budget, so in the time that you have, all that stuff is being wasted. And you're setting the wrong benchmarks. Right? So you tell the team, so let's say you plan too much in the release. So you're going to end up pushing the team to do more stuff. And when they fail, it reflects badly on you as well. And similarly, you plan too little and you're telling the stakeholders that you're not getting the value for your money. And the wrong expectations, again, relates to the same point as well. And this is the primary reason that we found that release plans fail, no reviews. So in Scrum, we make a release plan and then we act waterfallish about it. Right? We said, okay, we made one 6 months ago, it has to hold 6 months later. Doesn't work that way. Right? So considering it's agile, you should be reviewing it every time. And this is one kind of badly planned release, an under-planned release. So the problem is people tend to think, oh, okay, let's not take a chance. If we screw up, it's going to look bad. So we'll overestimate it. Right? Or maybe you just thought it's much harder than it looked. And over buffered, this was again something we saw with the newer POs who come in. Right? They say, okay, we'll give the time a little leeway so they can play around. And you end up underestimating so much. People, the stakeholders come and look at you and they say, why are you wasting so much time? Right? And you're looking at your team and they say, we can do better than this, you're not expecting enough. So it works both ways. Actually, let me just show you a quick demo of the tool. There it is. No, it's okay.
Extended.
Right, so this is the release plan tool we have. So let me just quickly create a release plan. Okay, so this is a good example of an underplanned release, right? So you plan 10 story points. So what most people don't realize, okay, they do the basic math and they come up with a number, which is how much you can achieve at the end of your release. But what people don't realize is that when you underplan and your team starts performing better, you have to modify this release. That people don't get, which is very surprising. And the next we move on to overplanned releases, where you obviously plan too much. Right? This generally doesn't happen. Nobody plans for failure. Right? You don't want to start off looking back. So that usually happens when you have underestimated stories. You pick up 10 story points, right? And then when you break it down, you end up thinking, okay, this is 15. And all of a sudden your release doesn't look so good anymore. And this underestimated story. Right? So you say, okay, I've done a rough sizing, so I'm going to put this in my backlog. And when you break it down, you end up with stories which aren't really, they're not knowns at the point you made that release. Right? So this point specifically tended to catch most POs unawares. So it looks good when you started your release plan, right? You got 10 story points with maybe 3 unestimated stories. And then as the sprint went, you estimated the stories, but you didn't compensate either by reducing scope or changing the time. And this, I think, is something most POs are guilty of. You change the scope but not the date, right? I see a lot of smiles, especially the Prowareness guys. Yeah? So you end up saying, okay, so this is again the breakdown of stories. So your team said, okay, 10 points for a story, and then when you broke it down, you ended up with 12. The POs don't take that into account. And scope creep. Well, this could either be the PO or the team who are being the creeps. So the PO adds more stuff, doesn't change the date, and the team tends to find more work and they don't talk to the PO, which again, oddly enough, happens. Right? So what happens when you do find these icebergs? fine. Now you figure out what your problems were, and then you figure out this is not going on plan. Then what do? So either you fix your scope or you fix your date, right? Is that switching? Right. Okay. Created a demo sprint for you guys. Alright, so what you see here so normally you see a sprint burn down, which is basically a line going from the top to the bottom, right? But what you normally see is just the lines, you'll not see the actual bars. That's your type of pointer, right?
Vimal, there's a laser.
Yeah. This is it?
Other side.
No, which is the pointer? This one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what you see here is the normal line that you'd see, and that's the only thing you'd see in your release burner, right? Now this line represents the amount of work left to be done, which is good, right? It shows you where you are right now. But what it doesn't show you is the scope change that you see here. So you started off with something like 200 points, and then this is not 200 points anymore, is it? Right? So you should know. So your release date is here and you're not going to make it, and you know why. And another thing is you know why the scope changed. It's not very apparent when you look at it. But then if you look at these dots here, they represent your unestimated stories. So it was 200 and you had a certain number, let's say 5. And then as you went forward, scope increased, this decreased. You went forward again, this decreased, and your scope is increased again. So people don't get that. So this kind of information is what usually catches people off guard. Right?
But how about if you increase even the resources? So
You
if
can increase the resources as well. So this shows you.
changes and the time doesn't change, you increase the resources. I think then you're still going to follow the same line.
Sure, let me ask you one thing then. How much time do you spend bringing a resource up to speed? So what John said, right? Scrum is not about the work or the process, it's more about the people. It's a culture that you follow within a team, otherwise it doesn't work. Right? So if you're bringing someone in, and you generally follow XP practices as well, you do pair programming, you do TDD, you do all the other kind of stuff, functional automation and things like that. Now, someone who you're bringing in, if he's mature enough, then of course you're going to see an increase in velocity, right? But if he's not, then what happens?
Anyways, if it's not even picking up so faster, still it will not be as bad as it is showing. At least
It won't be as bad, agreed, right? So that's another thing we can do.
Sometimes it can be disruptive. It is not necessary that it should improve when you have team members. They take, the other team members would also have to spend time.
No, you do not have to. When you do a pair programming, you are not teaching it, you are not testing it.
But the most common thing, the 4 squares that I had with the forming, storming, norming, and performing, the general rule with that diagram is that if you add a new member to that team, you go some people say you go right back to the start, but I tend to think you go to the next box.
Step back, basically.
Yeah. And then you lose, your gains. Short term, long term you're fine.
Yep.
Doesn't work for release planning though.
Yeah. So,
Not unless it's a
but
really long
let's say
release.
you did add someone who's, a mature guy, he knows how Scrum works and he's been with the team before and he's just probably moved out. So in that case, so effectively you're dealing with a velocity change, right? So you can always customize it. And all of a sudden you've got a new plan.
Yeah, at least your release plan is much better now.
Much better. Yeah. So in this case, so what we're doing here basically, it's a little mumbo jumbo here, how did we get one and things like that. So the idea is we take your past 6 sprints and we figure out how you've done, whether good, bad and ugly. And then we calculate best, worst and your normal scenario. So then you can figure out how, you get a vague idea of the variances that you have. And go back to this, I'll change it to 3. Right, so now as a peer you see that you're not going to finish. So what do? So you either fix your date or you fix your scope. Right? So you know that you have to go to market. Right? It's your decision when you want to go or what you want to go there with. So if you decide, okay, I need to release, let's say, what is this? March, right? So April 1st, right? So then you decide, okay, if I have to go there and I'm not able to deliver everything that I want to, then I pick and choose what's most important for me as a PO, and then I see how long that's going to take me, right? So it says 175, let's say, so I'm going to see 178 points. So then I adjust my backlog accordingly, right? But if I say, no, this is not going to work for me, I need all these features, it's pointless going to market without it, then I figure out how long it's going to take me. So this is 20th April, right? Given the current velocity and the state you're in right now, right? So the idea is that your tool, whatever you use, should help you have these conversations. Because unless you have these conversations, you're not going to fix these problems, before you end up at that release date and you're like, okay, oops, we missed this. It's not really a good thing to do, right? So that's basically the idea behind. And that's all I had. So yeah, in time for lunch. So any questions, comments? Yes?
How does this release planning work at the program level? I mean, I do understand how it works at the team level. How
Yeah.
does it work at the program level when each team has its own velocity? You have separate backlogs, all kind of combined backlogs. And how does this tool work in that way?
Sure. So in a program, generally the way it works, I'm assuming you're talking about sales.
No.
Yeah, just the program. Okay, so the general idea would be, in order for all teams to work within a program, you generally need to have the same story point definition. Right? So what you have at the program level is basically a super product backlog, right? Which then trickles down to the teams that you have. Right? So then you do a cumulative effort kind of thing, and then break it down into stories.
So each team used to have the same relative sizing?
Yes.
That's only when it's works?
This is not designed to work on a program.
Sorry, I've seen teams that, because I don't believe that you should enforce a joint story point. So how we work on the current project is the team define what their point is, but then at the governance level, they've kind of factored it. So one might be a story point of 1, another teams could be 1.5, another teams could be 2, and then that's managed at release planning.
Sure,
So
that's another way of doing it.
it's an overhead for an admin type person to do, but it leaves the team to be a bit more comfortable.
Yeah. So you basically normalize the scores, which is again just one more step to make it equal. Right? So that's another way of doing it. But this right now, what you saw is designed particularly for teams. So you would need to do a little more work in order to get it there. Anything else? Any other questions?
So are you basically saying that, from the philosophy standpoint, are you going to say that follow a plan rather than adapt to changing requirements?
I'm not saying follow a plan. What I'm saying is set expectations. Right? You say, okay, I'm going to accomplish these things, but as you go, you have to have those conversations to say, okay, those expectations will change. Right? So you make a plan, yes, that's to figure out where you're going. But unless you know where you're going, you're not going to be able to make changes in order to get there.
So that the team decides, right? I mean, if you have a backlog, prioritized backlog, they pick up the essential part based on the prioritization and ranking and other stuff, right? So it's a team that decides. So if you create a tool like this, it's more, you're creating a hierarchy in the first place, and then you're also putting pressure by saying that this has to be done at a certain stage.
Okay,
So it's then the time-bound pressure that builds in there.
Sure. So the team decides, but then their decision is based on what the peer has already decided.
That's from the ranking and the prioritization anyway, right?
Exactly. So what this helps is for the peer to say, okay, these are the things that need to be done, and this is given the team's current velocity and the current capability, right? So obviously this tool you can use to track whether the variations in the performance as well. Right? So it still helps you figure out whether the team's going to make it or not. Agreed. So the pressurization comes in when there's a culture problem. Right? When the PO doesn't understand, okay, quality will suffer if I'm going to ask for quantity. If I say I want 10 things when I can do only 8, then sure you'll get 10, but then that 10 will not be the same quality. Right? But that's a different issue you have that you need to solve. It's not the tool that's got it. Right? Does that answer your question?
Partially.
Partially.
Yeah.
I think you're concerned that release planning shouldn't be part of Scrum.
Not the release planning. I think the release planning is more at the product or the product owner level, right? It's
Yeah.
not for the team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Product owner defines the roadmap,
Yeah.
right? And then based on that, the team executes it.
Yeah.
And it may happen that many of those that the product owner has prioritized may not make it on the train, right? The agile train. So the teams just produce, and then at a certain point, whatever is produced is released. So
Yeah.
they may be the last prior things that are not produced that just get omitted. So there's no way you can make it happen, is what I'm saying. So if you create a plan, it will fail. I mean, this is a scientific approach, right?
It's just projection. It's
Yes.
not you would never say these are exact functionality that we're going to deliver on this day. You might have the MVP, of course, and then those would, or your date would have to move.
Those are the must-haves.
But there's the
I think there are two sides of it. What is saying from Agile standpoint, what SAFe is doing at this point of time. SAFe is talking about milestones. Right? We're talking about Agile train, ERT, and milestone. There was another thought when we moved from to Scrum Bangalore, when I said that we just move on Agile 10 whenever we are ready, we draw. Scale has mixed both. So you say if I have a milestone to be added, like I have to do a Christmas release, right? I will do a backwards planning, right? But the unpredictability that brings up, I think that will help. That when I'm reaching closer to it, I say I'm not able to make the X amount of features going into production at that point of time. Then it might help that what all we can put into it, and we'll definitely pick up from MVPs because the release is planned for MVP. But how to downsize an MVP to something which can make an release which sort of serves the Christmas, this might help. Yeah. But again,
So actually, there also I'm not sure this will help because this will
Might.
tell you what you
Yes.
can achieve, but then.
but I
what
mean,
you
I
actually
think the
want.
point that you brought out, if you can hold it up to program level, those decisions are made more from that standpoint.
Sure.
Really very.
Yeah, this, okay, this is the product plug, it is coming, we are implementing sales.
Yeah.
So you will see product, you will see portfolio and all those things.
But
It's
this,
coming.
what this, I see an advantage here is that the team also has not just a view of the backlog, but at a product level, they have a view. They have a bigger picture. So that's the advantage I see here. They are not only constrained to a backlog, we have to finish a backlog. They have a bigger picture. Nothing is hidden. Transparency is enabled here.
So they mostly set a context for, you're not just building stuff, you know why you're building stuff. So for example, when we're building this, so we built it with the idea that we will scale up eventually. Then we would build it in such a way that when I have to build it for program or portfolio, it'll be easier for me to do my job. Because then I'm not reinventing the same wheel again. Right? But if I knew I'm doing only release planning, I'm going to build it in such a way it works. So we're done.
One thing it might help, and which I saw if it's on the Scrum level, sometimes we did get into an unpredictability of the projective story points or velocity that we have done because of iterations or any other problem. Then it really struggles that if my story point drop from a plant level to what we are achieving at ground level, it gets very analytical to hit up to a number or in terms of quantum that we are delivering out. This might project it out there immediately.
Yeah, and this you can also do a post-mortem, so you know release phase. Right? So you're looking at this and you can pinpoint, okay, these are the points where we should have caught it earlier. That also makes it better.
it just gives you the MI that if you're going to know you fail, it'll tell you much earlier than you would if you were
Exactly.
any other way. I think it's quite a good tool.
So the idea was we spoke to all these people that we had access to, all these product owners and portfolio managers, and they kind of told us these are the problems we face. Right? So that's the input we got, and now we're getting more input as well, so you should see improvements there. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, you've been very kind.